This conference will now be recorded.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the TPB for March the 8th, 2022. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is to approve the agenda for today. I move that we approve the agenda. Do I have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Next item is to approve the minutes. Everyone's had an opportunity to review the minutes from February 8th, 2022. Move to approve. Do I have a second? We have a motion and 2 seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Next item is the director's report. I'll turn it over to Chad.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Good afternoon, members of Transportation Policy Body. Today's report, year 2022 WAMPO staff tasks. Last meeting, staff presented the task list, and we followed up from our Madam Vice Chair's comment on how timelines for all those tasks. So staff put together the timelines, and it's in your packets as well as in here. That's the first item in this report. Second is the travel demand model. RFP went out and we received proposals. Selection committee comprises now of one from KDOT representative, one staff, and one from City of Wichita staff representative and WAMPO staff. So selection committee is working in selecting the consulting firm, and subsequently staff will work with the KDOT staff in getting the contract ready, hopefully by next TPB meeting. That's the status on that task that's ongoing. The next item in the director's report is Nick's update on TIP amendment. Nick, could you please? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. For Amendment 6 to the 2021 to 2024 TIP, the culvert changes ran from January 31st to February 11th, and we are now in the public comment period running from February 26th through March 27th. Then it will go to a TAC vote on the 28th and to this body for final approval on April 12th.
Thank you, Nick. Mr. Chair, back to you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you. Any questions at all on the director's report? Seeing none, we'll move on. Next item is public comments. Is there anyone in the audience, or is there anyone online that would like to speak during public comments today? I don't see anyone. We'll move on to the next item. First item is action of the 2021 WAMPO audit final report. And we have Teresa Seymour here and Michael Gerber from BKD, who did the audit Also, the executive committee has received a copy of it, and it should be in your package. So we'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. And yes, again, my name is Teresa Seymour. I'm actually here joined today with Julian Rios. He was the manager on this job and did a good amount of the audit work. So I wanted to bring him along and just say thank you to him and all his hard work on this audit. So last meeting, I presented the draft of the financial statements, went over the management letter and some of the details of the draft. And I think I'm just here today to answer any questions on the final report and have you guys approve the final report.
Very good. Everyone's had an opportunity to review it. Are there any questions from that review? I don't see any questions. If we have a motion and a second to receive and file, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Excellent. Thank you. I want to thank Chad and Patty again for their hard work on getting this done so quickly. And we really appreciate the opportunity to perform the audit for the WAMPO board. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. It gives us great confidence because it wasn't just a few years ago we didn't have great confidence. So thank you very much. Next item is action on the tip fees. Chad, we'll let you brief.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me see if Nick has time for the next slide. As you all know, this discussion started in the last meeting and followed by executive committee members looking at these tip fees. We had a good amount of discussion. As you all know, the goal is to have a agency that is financially sustainable, serving you stronger, and also the partnership with federal partners and state partners have that increased partnership is the goal behind this task. And you all have seen how much our chair and the members are committed in more investments in Wichita area as well because of how it influences the economy of not just Wichita, even the South Central Kansas also. So on that note, we had executive committee members had a discussion on this and a couple of options were explored. There is table 2 in your packets. It's on page number 43. That's the one that executive committee has recommended. There is a 3% tip fees for 2023 TIP projects programmed in the TIP. And then from 2024 TIP projects onwards, there's a 2.4% consistent for the following years. The goal initially was to have reserves so that in case of contingencies, agency has a backup plan in terms of finances. And those reserves were to get to the levels of 450,000. However, with this estimates, it may, the table seems to be reaching around 2028, about 350,000. But there are other ways to work for staff to reduce some of the studies budgets and staff work in-house on some of these studies. And there are other ways and mechanisms to attain that goal as well. But this is the least possible ways of developing that goal of 450,000 reserves in the near future. With that, I would let our chair.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Jack for bringing this up to us. We discussed it at great length at our executive committee meeting. And if this table you see is thanks to Mayor Ussery, he came up with this concept during our executive meeting that we had recently, and I'll talk more about the executive meeting here later on in the meeting today. But I really had 2 goals as we were taking a look at these tip fees. The major goal is that we don't go back into the Bank of Wichita and go into debt again. And Our second goal is that when we're all gone here in 2031, that we don't have to address this again, that we have a solution that takes us forever in the future. And what I see from this table 2 that Mayor Usry put together for us, it meets both of those goals. So that's why I recommend that we adopt this table 2 for the tip fee for the future. It is the recommendation of your executive committee also. So do we have any questions on whether or not that this is the right direction to go? I see no questions. Then I move that we adopt this table 2 for our tip fees for the future. Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. And again, thanks to everyone that worked on this. Thanks for bringing it to our attention so that we made sure that we were doing what was right for the community and right for the future of WAMPO. Next item on the agenda is our tip call for project approach. So Ashley and Nick are going to brief that today.
Thank you. First, just a reminder that the call for projects for the 2023 to 2026 TIP ends tomorrow at 5 p.m. So please, 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 please tell your staff to get their projects in by 5 p.m. tomorrow for that call for projects. And this spring, our staff and the project will review the projects that are submitted, and the project selection committee will meet in the next March and April, most likely, and consider those. And then during the summer, the TIP document itself will be developed, and in summer or fall, the TAC will give its recommendation, and the TPB its final approval before October 1st, 2022. All right, let's see here. Right. Now as a reminder, this current call for projects is primarily for funds for federal fiscal years 2025 and 2026 to get new projects in for those years. However, if there is a surplus available, funds could also be given to projects for 2023 and 2024. And now, historically, for this process, this kind of call for projects has usually only given WAMPO sub-allocated funds to projects that are already on the MTP funding menu. A subset of the projects listed in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan that have been designated as eligible for WAMPO sub-allocated funds. However, for reasons that Ashley will go into in just a moment, a new approach has been proposed for this particular time around.
Thank you. Correct. Yes. So thank you, Nick. As he mentioned, we're doing a special approach just for this TIP selection process. And a little bit of background. So the MTP, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, is the long-range plan that looks out 20 years and sets the vision for transportation in our region. And so the TIP, how that fits in with that is the TIP is the implementation arm. So projects that are in the TIP must be consistent with the MTP. So the current projects in the MTP were selected in 2018 through 2019, and the MTP was approved in 2020. And the processes that I'm going to describe on the next slide are really for this TIP selection process because of things that have happened, very unique things like the pandemic and the new bipartisan infrastructure law, and just changes that have occurred since 2018, 2019, and 2020. So this is the process that we are proposing, just one of those, not both of them, for the FY23-26 TIP process. The teal boxes are the ones that were recommended by TAC, and the first two processes are the same. So we do the call for projects, project selection committee selects projects. If we follow the process that we normally do and will do in the future, we would select projects just from the MTP funding menu, which is the yellow pentagon. And then we would go through the process of developing it and have the document approved before October 1. What we are proposing for this special process is to select projects not just from the MTP funding menu, but also from just the MTP, that are the projects that are not in the subset, and then also projects that are not in the MTP at all, but they still meet the MTP goals. And so if the project selection committee selected projects that are not on the MTP funding menu, so those other two project lists, or not lists, projects that are in the MTP or not in there already, we would need to amend the MTP. And so that would happen concurrently with the TIP development. It would be a tight development process to do both a TIP update and a MTP amendment, but we believe we could do that and have it all approved by October 1 of 2022. And as I mentioned, the TAC recommended doing that, following the teal process with all the projects, but also making sure that all the projects are on a level playing field, so not having any advantage for the projects that might already be on the MTP funding menu. Okay, that was the last slide for that. So this is what we need your action on, is to move forward with one of these processes.
All right, Ashley, thank you. Mayor Usry, do you have any comments?
Well, just to recap a little bit from the TAC meeting, there was a considerable discussion about this process change and whether or not the current current projects in could be competing with projects that be brought up. There was considerable conversation about whether there was enough time for anyone to even put in a new project. We went back and reviewed the emails that went out. The emails, in fact, asked for projects, whether they were in it or was not in, so everyone had a chance. And there was a feeling, the consensus of the group there, the feeling is that so much changes that the new projects were probably going to be competitive and more relevant to what's going on right now than some of the others. The discussion then went on to, if that's the case, then does everyone submit the projects, be the ones that's already in or the new ones, and should you do the ones that were currently in the plan first and then consider the new ones? And it was also felt, after a lot of discussion, that they should just be based on their own merit, because they're all going to qualify based on what we require. So that was the concern, or the recommendation. The only concern comes up is just the overall process itself, is when you go to this long range planning and you put projects in there, and then as they finally become due, if you have a substitute process, does that take away from the validity of the program itself? And so there was that thought given, that discussion given, but the consensus still was, with everything that's happened, that this process could survive with asking for additional projects as well. And I don't know what that is going to determine from the communities, how many is actually going to come in that wasn't on the TIP originally. So that's the background of it. And the TAC committee did have this same lengthy discussion and recommend the second process.
Very good. Questions for either Ashley or Mayor Usry on the option to change the way that we're doing this process? I don't see any questions, Mayor. Do you want to make a motion?
I recommend that the body follow the same teal process that the TAC did.
I'll second that. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. I appreciate the recommendation. Next item is the Safety Plan Steering Committee. And back to Ashley.
Yes, thank you. So in the past, we've talked about how we would like to develop a safety plan. And so today's action is to approve the Safety Plan Steering Committee and Focus Group structure. not necessarily each of the people that are on the list, but the overall structure that we will use moving forward. WAMPO's role in this process is to coordinate and allocate resources, and we will eventually hire a consultant to do this planning process, and it will identify projects that will then go in the MTP and eventually the TIP in order to try to improve safety. The Safety and Health Committee was developed by WAMPO in August of 2020, and that committee has been meeting quarterly since then. And their purpose is to review data and develop information for the next MTP. And through discussions with that committee and other places, it was determined that we need to have the safety plan. Well, the Safety Committee only meets, or I'm sorry, Safety and Health Committee only meets quarterly, and they have kind of a broader scope. So we're proposing to form a safety plan steering committee and focus group in order to guide this consultant-led process. It's a much shorter term thing from 22 to 23, where the Safety and Health Committee is through 25 when the next MTP is approved, will need to be approved by. And the Safety Plan Steering Committee Focus Group would discontinue after this planning process, and then the Safety and Health Committee would take it up and move forward with implementation through the MTP. The structure includes a steering committee and a focus group. The steering committee would be mainly comprised of staff to address the design solutions, enforcement solutions, education and awareness solutions. And then a focus group would be comprised of members of the Safety and Health Committee that are not staff. The steering committee also has Safety and Health Committee people, but it's mainly staff. And then other organizations that we think would be applicable. So the steering committee would be the technical guide through the process. And the focus group would be more of like a gut check and to see, okay, this is what we're thinking about. Does it sound okay? And they would meet a couple of times during the process, and the steering committee would meet much more often. Our current structure for the steering committee includes these people here. Most of them came from the Safety and Health Committee, and we've put them with each solution based on their expertise. And then the focus group. 4 of these entities were already on the Safety and Health Committee. A couple of them, other ones, were identified by the chair or the current chair of the Safety and Health Committee, Dr. Alba. And then a couple others were added at the TAC meeting. So do you all have any recommendations for people to include on either the steering committee or the focus group? I don't know. Okay. All right.
Okay, you're asking for recommendations from the,
Yeah.
the TPB. Do any members here have recommendations of other folks that should be on the steering committee or on the focus group?
And you can also get that to me later if you'd like, because today we're just forming the structure, and then we can continue to add to the group or groups.
Okay. For the future action item, I guess I'll give everyone a little bit of homework. If you can think through this and come up with anyone else that should be on this, please let Chad or Ashley know so that we can get them added. Yeah. And we have action on this item?
Yes, just to form the structure.
Very good. Let me go back to that part. So the TAC recommended regarding the purpose of the steering committee and the focus group to form a steering committee and focus group for the development of a WAMPO safety plan or proposed as proposed without suggestions of specific names, organizations to include is what this says.
Correct.
So,
If I could just clarify that a little bit.
Sure.
Again, after a lot of discussion about whether this would be a long-term committee focus group or not, and the reason we went with that recommendation is this is going to be something that's formed and then dissolved. And instead of trying to hold them down to names and exactly who's in it, The purpose of the focus group was identified as needed, but it wasn't necessarily needed to try to get this body or the TAC to try to name names and exact positions. They just need to form the group to get the information they need. And the only thing the TAC did was give them authorization to do that. And that's just what the board needs to do.
Very good. Any questions over what the mayor just stated? Mayor, would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd make the same motion that the forming of the steering committee and a focus group for the development of the WAMPO safety plan without suggestion of specific names, organizations to include.
We have a motion and a second by Tom. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the next item is update on federal functional classification map. And Nick is back up.
Thank you. Quick note before starting. A majority of the federal functional classification work I'm about to present on was prepared by WAMPO employee Marcela Quintanilla, who could not be at this meeting today. So a quick primer. All roadways are divided into 7 federal functional classifications, from interstates down to local roads. From interstates, then other freeways and expressways, and other principal arterials, minor arterials, major collectors, minor collectors, and local roads, with the overall theme being that the higher order the roadway, i.e. the lower the number shown here, the faster the speeds, the greater the traffic volumes, the more of a trunk route it is, so to speak. The fewer places there are to get off, and so on. And these have significance in terms of what funding is allowed on what roadways. For example, in general, most federal transportation funds can't be used on local roads, and certainly the higher functional classifications generally would have an advantage otherwise. And also what kind of development is allowed along a roadway is also affected by the federal functional classification. For example, if a high order roadway could not have a driveway every 50 feet or so, for example. And so that, and the FHWA has guidance on the particulars that go into determining this. So it's not all just up to a judgment call. And here is an image of the current approved federal functional classification map, which is also available in an interactive version on the WAMPO website at wampo.org/fun-class. And you can also see this on page 64 of your packet. And here is a proposed adjusted map that we have come up with in coordination with jurisdictions and KDOT staff. And this process was started when we realized that we needed to add the Arc 95 bridge, i.e. the bridge across the Arkansas River at 95th Street to this map, so that it could eventually be added to the network and put in the functional classification for that new segment. And we decided that since we're doing that anyway, then we might as well also make whatever other updates are necessary. And hence we came up with a list of additional ones to put onto this, which you may see starting on page 65 of your packet, and with close-ups and a list on the subsequent pages. Sorry, that's the last slide there. Now, and we informed the TAC at their last meeting to if they could get get whatever other updates to the federal functional classifications map that they want into us by their next meeting later this month. And so we are also making a similar request to the TPB to if you have changes you'd like to see to the federal functional classification map, get those requests into us by the next meeting of this body, so that we can then coordinate with your respective jurisdictions and with KDOT to get those all sorted out and have a final federal functional classification map to present for your approval at a future meeting. And just a note that yesterday we received requests for a couple additional changes to this map from the city of Wichita, but due to the timing, they are not reflected yet in the materials that you have been provided, which include 55 changes so far. But if the ones for Wichita are included, that would go up by a couple, depending on how things work out. And we have not heard yet from anyone else since the TAC meeting in regards to things that might be added to this list or removed from this list, but there could still be more to come. And so that is the end of that update, unless there are questions at this point.
Nick, thank you. Any questions for Nick on this subject? So between Nick and Ashley, now you have 2 homework items. So if you have any additions or changes to this map, please make sure you get back with Chad or Nick. So that's our second homework. Move to receive and file this update. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the executive committee. And we've already covered most of what the executive committee discussed at the meeting that we held on February the 24th. But the main thing was the tip fees. We've all voted on that. Chad also talked about some of the staff tasks that are coming up, and we've discussed that. He updated us on where we're at with the budget. We get that update each time that we have a executive committee meeting, and we are on track with that, and we're not going back in the hole, so things are looking good there. And he briefed us on the audit final report and gave us a copy of that, and you all have reviewed that, and we voted on it today. So really that's the major part of it. Concluding that portion of it, we excused Chad from the room, and the executive committee last year did not provide a raise to Chad because we weren't sure where we were at financially at that point in time. But the executive committee, we did discuss raising the salary for Chad, and we voted unanimously to give Chad a 6% increase in his pay from this point forward. So I wanted the rest of the TPB to know that we did take those actions at the executive committee. Oh, any questions on anything that we discussed at the executive committee? Okay. Well, I'm still have the floor then before I go on to the next item. I don't know if Pete Meitzner is on the video. Pete, are you on?
Mayor, David, can you hear me all right?
Yes. Hey,
okay, yeah. And I'm on by phone right now, so.
Okay, well, we can see you too, so good.
Well,
anyway,
I've got to get, okay, go ahead.
Do you have time to speak for a minute?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We had a very important luncheon today where we discussed Amtrak. Now, I know it's not a WAMPO project, but what we came up with at the end of that meeting is that we do need a special meeting of the Transportation Coalition, and Brett's in the room right now, so he's probably hearing this for the first time. And we're looking at April the 21st for those of you that are on the Transportation Coalition to talk about Amtrak and what the next actions are going to have to be for us to move forward with some of that. So I don't know if Pete, if you have an opportunity to kind of summarize what came out of the meeting today.
Well, you said April 21st. I think you mean March 21st.
I beg your pardon, March 21st, correct?
Right. Well, they updated us, and basically there is the states. Really, it's kind of a neat thing. Obviously, the quickest update is May of 22 through May of 23 is when they're going to solicit proposals from the states. They're finalizing. It does look like it's an 80% capital grant with a 20% match. There is $66 billion that has been awarded to Amtrak over the next 5 years. It is important. Another differentiating part, some of you have heard before that it's up to the states to pay the difference between revenue versus costs. And previously, Amtrak was able to do a coverage for 3 years, meaning if whatever your shortfall was, they'd cover 80% the first year, 60% the second year, and 40% the third year. And then after that, then the states that had an intercity passenger rail, they would have to pay any difference in revenue versus costs. But this now, they've changed that from 3 years to 6 years. And so besides the capital cost grant world of 80% and with a 20% match, it will be a 6-year revenue versus cost program. And the first year they would cover 90%, and then it just goes down 10% each year. So it's 90, then 80, 70, 60, 50, 40 on year 6. And then after that, you're on your own. Obviously, the goal is that ridership and everything and costs and everything would be figured out within that 5-6 years, and hopefully it'd be neutral, if not positive. Probably the most important thing is Kansas is working on the service development plan. I think if there's somebody from KDOT, Corey Davis is helping put that together. BNSF is being cooperative. They're not, the host railroads are not cooperative in a lot of parts of the country, but BNSF is a good partner. And there is a thing called a corridor development or corridor plan. The states that want to be involved in the first year of solicitations need to submit their request to be included in the corridor plan. I think we got to look further into that. Brett, you could maybe be helpful. I understand a corridor plan would be like the I-35 corridor, but the DOTs need to sign off on that. It's not a cost. It's not an obligation. It's from what we understand. So our effort here locally is to make sure that our state representatives are comfortable and supportive of taking the next steps. And that's kind of where we're at. David, I don't know what I've forgot, but those are from my notes. So.
Oh, very good. Bottom line is, in the near future, we really need a commitment from the state. We've carried this in Sedgwick County on our federal legislative agenda, but they said the federal side is pretty well finished. We're in good shape. They've approved everything we need. At this point, it's down to the state. So we need the governor on board. We need the Secretary of Transportation on board. We need the legislature on board. So that's where all of us are going to come in. And that's why we're going to be looking at the Transportation Coalition that we've got with the Chamber of Commerce here in the near future to help us get all of those different organizations on board, because it's now to the point where the state of Kansas has to support this as we move forward.
I would agree.
Any questions? The mayor was in the meeting and a number of the leaders in the community were there. Both Pete and I attended the meeting at lunch today. So we're now to the point where we need to go back to the state and get their support. So, Brett, you've got a task coming up. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, it's just, it's not really a WAMPO program right now, but I just thought that because we would deal in transportation, and as my old director of public works always said, transportation is the mother's milk of economic development. I keep using that. This is part of transportation for the future. So I thought it was important to bring it up. So we'll go on to the next item unless there are any questions on that. Next item is active transportation with Alan, and I know he's in the room. You got anything for us today?
Just a very quick update. We had our meeting of the Active Transportation Committee last week, last Wednesday. Had very good attendance, although, Chad, it occurs to me that if our website included the name fun class, that we'd be maybe even better attendance at our meetings. We had a very interesting presentation from the city of Mays. Got a lot of exciting things going on in their bike and pedestrian plan and accomplishing a lot there. We're continuing to hear from more cities. We've heard from most of the communities in the area, and we will be then moving toward talking about developing a plan going forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. I appreciate it. Any questions? Seeing none. KDOT Wichita Metro, and I do see Tom's online, so go ahead, Tom.
Thank you. It is early in the spring. As you all know, we're still suffering through winter, so we only have right now 3 active projects going, and that, of course, is the North Junction Gold Project Accelerated Phase 1, and that is making some good progress. We have 2 K96 projects east of I-135 down to Kellogg. The first one is a guardrail project, which affects very little traffic, but occasionally it does. And then the other one is just going to start this Sunday, and that is a pavement patching project east of Webb Road to Kellogg. And if you drive that K96 stretch between, say, Webb Road and 21st Street, you know how bad there are some areas, and they will be focused on that area and getting those patched. So that'll go through the summer and through early fall. But it is early in the year, and we are confident that spring is coming, and that means more projects out there on the highways. So we'll update you on that next month.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to KDOT. Mike Moriarty is with us today. Or is Brent going to talk?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to be here today, and I don't have to apologize for not being here in person, so it's wonderful to be back. I did want to briefly note a couple staff changes, rather significant staff changes at headquarters. Deputy Secretaries Maggie Dahl and Lindsay Douglas both made the difficult decision to leave KDOT. Maggie returned to the private sector at a consulting firm, and Lindsay returned to her previous employer at Union Pacific, this time in Chicago. So we wish them both the best. Their roles have been absorbed by Deputy Secretary Bert Morey, as well as our Director of Engineering, Calvin Reed. And Calvin was named Senior Director last month. So essentially, he's now the number 3 person at KDOT. So we're trying to fill the gaps for Maggie and Lindsay. Wanted to note quickly, we are continuing to stand up our transportation electrification program. We hope to have our state EV investment plan in place on time on August 1st. We'll keep this group up to date with that progress. And lastly, I brought some copies of our annual report, which was published back in January. I'll also, Chad, I might send out the link if that's okay through the WAMPO Plus. That sounds good. Okay, that concludes my update.
Good, thank you. Anyone else from KDOT want to say anything today?
All right. I want to say a couple good things. North Junction project moving along. It's nice to see the piers up. We're going to see a bridge go on there before long and get that. It's moving forward. Great thing. That's the accelerated gold project. The gold project had a meeting last week, and we are working pretty diligently trying with the railroad, the UP down there. We're adding a new bridge for that flyover ramp, and it's going to be adjacent and west of current I-135. And the pier configuration on that has been pretty tricky, working with the railroad to be able to get in there and build that. Confident that project's going to move forward and let as planned, but it's been a task. We're working with the K96, the group, to identify what that looks like on the expansion project on 96, pretty early in the stages. And that's probably enough for now.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Any questions from KDOT today? Okay. Next item is Federal Highway Administration. Is Rick online?
This is Cecily Cochran. Rick is not online. I am here. I have no new updates, but if anyone has any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer.
Anyone have anything for Federal Highway? I guess the only question is we have is how much money can we get and how soon?
We're working on it as diligently as we can. We're still waiting on some new updates. I think probably by the end of the week, we should have a little bit more information. But as of right now, I can't answer it, but I'm hoping to soon.
Very good. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for being here today. Any questions for Federal Highway? Seeing none, next item is other business. Anyone else have anything to bring up for other business today? Seeing nothing, we're doing pretty good. We actually made it in 45 minutes today. So with that, we're adjourned. Thank you all for being here today.